Greetings, YouTubers. We have a major problem in society today, and it's people who think the government is their mother. We were told that Roe v. Wade would end or abate the problem of single motherhood and so-called unwanted children. We were also told that massive new social programs and trillions of spending on them over the last several decades would also end this problem. Have these measures actually succeeded? Has allowing bimbos and uneducated sluts snuffing out the lives of unwanted children cured the problem of single motherhood and unwanted children? And many of these decaying urban centers, such as the south side of Chicago, south central LA, and Detroit, are just proof positive of the failures of these programs. None of these programs have been a success, and our pop cultural movement to the left has only made it worse. Coulter was right about how society glorifies single motherhood through crappy television shows and other mediums of communication. In addition, giving these losers, many of which have multiple children with multiple fathers, a bevy of welfare benefits only encourages this type of behavior. As far as I'm concerned, unless you are disabled, you are not entitled to any of my dollars to pay for your own mistakes. Society is circling the drain. Let's look at some of the stats to back this up. Unlike many other YouTubers who don't provide references, we do. Again, you can see it all off on the right side there. Just click it and learn. From the early 1970s through the late 1980s, as abortion became more and more frequent, there was a tremendous increase in the rate of out-of-wedlock births. Who would have thunk it? I'm probably going to be racist just for pointing this out. From an average of 5% in 1965 to 69 to over 16% 20 years later, the period 85 to 89, among blacks, this is where I'm a racist, the number jumped from 35% to 62%. In 1965, the Moynihan Report sounded an alarm about 23.6% of African American children born out of wedlock. Today, the figure for the entire American population is 38.5%. and 70.7% for African Americans. I'm probably a racist for pointing that out, though. Add to that AIDS and other STDs and the unquantifiable coarsening of the culture and devaluing of personal intimacy. The segment of that commentary was from an article by George Will talking about how food has become the new sex. We have Nanny Status telling us all what to eat and taxing what we consume to protect us from ourselves, but continuing to lavish irresponsible idiots with taxpayer-funded benefits and little results. So they're all for that, of course. You can't eat what you want, but you can go ahead and have about 5 kids from 4 different guys, and here's some food stamps for you. Out of Peter's pocket. He lives down the street. We just took it from him. Society is more concerned about food when it should be more concerned about people sucking off the system and continuing their irresponsible ways. As an aside, asking me to pay for some fat guy's health care, some fat Democrat in South Central LA, eats burgers all the time, gets fat, needs health care, not my problem. He did it to himself. I'm not mean, I'm just being honest. Do you really think they'd continue to have bastard child after bastard child if they weren't promised decades of welfare benefits? Let's continue. Nearly 40% of babies born in the United States in 2007 were delivered by unwed mothers, according to data released last month by the National Center for Health Statistics. The 1.7 million out-of-wedlock births, I thought abortion was going to solve this problem, of 4.3 million total births marked a more than 25% jump from 5 years before. Stats such as these, which include for the second year in a row a bump in teenage pregnancies after a 14-year decline, leaves Sarah Brown concerned. She worries about the children born to unwed parents, about the disadvantages they often face, including increased likelihood of poverty despite these massive, wonderful programs, and greater high school dropout rates. I wish people spend as much time planning, this is what she said, I wish people spend as much time planning when to get pregnant, with whom, under what circumstances as they do, planning their next vacation, said Brown, the CEO and founding director of the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy. She also said the stigma of out-of-wedlock births has eroded, and these numbers made me feel perhaps it's disappeared altogether. So she recognizes a social problem there. While 28% of white women gave birth out of wedlock in 2007, nearly 72% of black women and more than 51% of Latinas did. Let's look again at some population demographics. Is illegal immigration fueling this fire? Why, yes, it is. As an aside, we have too much legal immigration too. I'm not against legal immigration, I wouldn't stop it, but we have too much of that as well. The high rate of illegitimate births to immigrants is a warning to American leaders not to expect help building family values from such newcomers, according to a new study released today by the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington, D.C. Hispanic immigrants have seen the largest increase in out-of-wedlock births, from 19% in 1980 to 42% in 2003. 19% in 1980, 42% in 2003. According to the study entitled Illegitimate Nation, authored by Dr. Stephen A. Camarota, Director of Research at CIS. For immigrants overall, both legal and illegal, out-of-wedlock birth rates have been comparable to illegitimate birth rates among the native population, increasing from 13% in 1980 for immigrants, both legal and illegal, to 32% in 2003. The higher rate of illegitimate births among Hispanic immigrants is important, Camarota notes, because births to Hispanic mothers now account for 59% of all births to foreign-born mothers. He also found that illegitimate births tend to associate, here's recognizing the social problem, he also found that illegitimate births tend to associate with the low education levels of the mothers. In 2003, 65% of illegitimate births to Hispanic immigrants were to mothers who lacked a high school diploma. In 2003, for the first time, the absolute number of illegitimate births among Hispanic immigrants exceeded the absolute number of illegitimate births among African Americans. Don't tell Reverend Jesse Jackson this. He'll accuse you of being a racist. But coming from a man who fathers bastard children himself, we'll take that with a large grain of salt. Prisons are full of children who grew up without fathers, and these trillions we've spent on basically useless social programs are doing a fine job, eh? Hispanic women have the highest unmarried birth rate in the country, over 3 times that of whites and Asians, and nearly 1.5 times that of black women, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Every 1,000 unmarried Hispanic women bore 92 children in 2003, compared with 28 children for unmarried women, 22 for unmarried Asian women, and 6 for unmarried black women. Some 45% of all Hispanic births occur outside of marriage. Almost half. For you liberals out there, that's almost half. Compared with 24% for whites, 15% of Asians. Only the percentage for blacks, 68%, is higher, but they are not facing the same population boom. Hispanics now dominate the federal Women, Infants, and Children Free Food Program. Hispanic enrollment grew more than 25% from 1996 to 2002. In contrast, black enrollment dropped 12%, and white enrollment dropped 6.5%. So illegal immigration is also fueling this pop cultural cesspool. Let's leave that border open a few more years. Come on in. Free food stamps, free health care, free education, free everything. I'll call a spade a spade. It's obvious we have a lot of stupid people reproducing in this nation. Abortion on demand didn't solve this problem, yet it was supposed to, and neither has trillions in social spending. And lastly, lest you think we're not spending enough on social programs, consider this. In 2008, federal and state governments spent $714 billion, or 5% of the total economy, on means-tested welfare aid, providing cash, food, housing, medical care, and targeted social services to poor and low-income Americans. That doesn't include Social Security and Medicare, mind you. If converted into cash, this aid would be nearly 4 times the amount needed to eliminate poverty in the U.S. by raising the incomes of all poor households above the federal poverty levels. So yes, Ann Coulter was right. Society glorifies single motherhood, encourages it. There's no stigma attached to it anymore. Ergo, we have our problem now, and people just keep having children out of wedlock, expecting the government to pick up the tab, and we are well on our way. Other than being a social problem, a moral problem, it's becoming an economic problem, and it's going to break us. So yes, Ann Coulter was right, and those liberals who just go nuts about it, well, they're just going nuts because she's dang right. She's dead on. That's all there is to say about it.